Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Castia.
Think of us as your friendly NPCs for today. We're here to guide you through this stack of really interesting source material you've provided.
Yep, and working away in the background, the one who does all the heavy lifting with the research and production, that's Psy.
He digs through everything for these analyses. Sometimes he even does solo deep dives, to give us NPCs a bit of a break.
He does. Also, just a heads up, if you hear any minor sound glitches, please bear with us as we work out the kinks.
Absolutely. So what are we digging into today?
Well, it's a pretty cool hypothetical clash based on the sources. We're looking at Jodie Holmes and Aiden from Beyond, two souls.
Versus an early version of Jean Grey.
Yeah.
Like Marvel Girl Jean Grey from the X-Men.
Exactly. And our mission today is to pull out the key insights from the analysis provided. We need to understand their powers, their limitations, potential strategies.
And figure out, based strictly on these sources, who might actually have the advantage if they faced off.
And it's really important, like you said, to frame this right. Jodie and Aiden are based on their entire story from the game.
But Jean Grey is specifically her early career.
Yeah.
Pre-Phoenix Force. Way before all that cosmic power comes into play. Keeps the analysis focused, right?
Precisely. It grounds the whole comparison. Okay, so let's get started. First up, Jodie Holmes and Aiden, the tethered duo.
Okay, Jodie and Aiden, they're really one unit, aren't they? But two distinct parts. You've got Jodie, the human conduit, but she's also a survivor. Seriously tough.
Right. Her whole life is defined by being connected to Aiden. Early years under observation by the DPA, that's the Department of Paranormal Activity.
And then she transitions into becoming a trained CIA operative, which is huge.
It really is. The sources emphasize her resilience, her survival skills, honed through some incredibly traumatic stuff, and that CIA combat training.
Hand-to-hand, firearms, endurance. She's got the training. But she is still physically human, vulnerable.
Definitely vulnerable physically. The analysis mentions she also had psychological resilience training, which might offer some buffer against mental stuff, but probably not against, a top-tier telepath.
And then there are her innate abilities, linked to Aiden, mediumship.
Yeah, she can sense and interact with spirits, ghosts, usually needs physical contact to really establish a strong link, though.
And psychometry, touching things or bodies and seeing the past. The analysis suggests Aiden often helps with that, makes the visions clearer or stronger.
Which brings us neatly to Aiden himself. He's the really unique part of this equation.
Yeah, described as incorporeal, ethereal. Basically a spirit entity, but distinct from the other entities in the infraworld, that spirit realm place.
And the sources reveal a key detail. Aiden is actually Jodie's stillborn twin brother. That explains the incredibly deep, unbreakable bond they share.
Wow, okay. And he exists in permanent no-clip mode, just phases through walls, objects.
Pretty much. Naturally invisible, too, unless you're Jodie or maybe someone else sensitive to that kind of thing.
So, offensively, what's he got? Telekinesis.
Oh, yeah. Potent telekinesis. Moving small things, big things like cars, causing environmental damage. He can even do fine manipulation, like typing on a keyboard.
And then there's the choking ability. That one sounds nasty. The sources seemed a bit ambiguous on it.
A little. He can definitely psionically strangle people. The in-game description mentions attacking until the soul's gone, which hints it might be more than physical, maybe a direct attack on the life force or spirit.
Or it could just be really focused TK causing suffocation.
Exactly. The analysis acknowledges that ambiguity, which could matter a lot in a fight.
What else? Possession.
Yep. He can take control of people's minds and bodies, use them to fight, relay info. But there are limits.
And limits alike.
Well, he can't physically touch other people while possessing someone, and if the host body gets hurt or killed, Jodie feels intense backlash, like sympathetic trauma.
Ouch. That's a serious drawback.
It is. Plus, the analysis points out that strong-willed individuals, or even just someone really alert and expecting trouble, might be able to resist the possession attempt. It's not foolproof.
Okay, so that's offense. Yeah. Defensively.
Super important for Jodie's survival. He can create this protective energy shield around her. Sources say it blocks physical hits, bullets, even hostile spiritual entities.
How strong is it?
Seems tied to Jodie's stamina, maybe Aiden's own energy reserves. It's not infinite, presumably.
And healing.
Yes, he can heal Jodie, and apparently others too, from pretty serious wounds, like bullet wounds. Yeah. The sources describe it as maybe like rapid regeneration or faith healing. The text uses maybe, so it's not definitively instant, but definitely significant.
Intangibility and stealth are his default, right?
Yeah.
Sneaking around unseen.
Exactly. He can phase through anything physical, and he can even extend that into an invisibility shield for Jodie, making her visually undetectable.
Any other tricks?
Some sensing or clairvoyance abilities, giving Jodie visions, helping find hidden things. Clarity varies, though, and miscellaneous stuff like messing with electronics.
The ghostly ATM. I remember reading about that. Hilarious.
Definitely memorable. So yeah, a powerful team, but with some really significant vulnerabilities.
The biggest one being that tether, right? Aiden can't go too far from Jodie.
That's their absolute primary weakness. Separation causes Jodie extreme pain, exhaustion. It limits Aiden's range massively.
And there's that specific weakness to certain tech.
Right, those DPA-designed containment fields. They're specifically made to block spiritual or ethereal energy, and the sources state clearly Aiden cannot pass through them. It's a very unique vulnerability tied to his nature.
Also, Aiden's powers depend heavily on Jodie's condition.
Totally. If Jodie is unconscious, badly hurt, or just drained, Aiden weakens or his powers fail. Take out Jodie and you've basically shut Aiden down.
And Aiden himself isn't always reliable.
He can be impulsive, fiercely protective, sometimes acting against Jodie's wishes based on his own feelings or instincts, unpredictable.
Plus that shared pain from possession hosts.
And the fact that possession isn't guaranteed, lots of limitations stacking up.
It's a really complex setup. Okay, quick pronunciation check from the sources. Jodie Holmes is Joe-A-G, House O-H-M-Z.
And Aiden can be Aiden or Aiden. Both seem common.
And Jean Grey is Jean Grey. Good. Okay, let's switch gears. Early Jean Grey.
Right. Marvel Girl Jean. Before the Phoenix, already an alpha-level mutant, huge potential, trained by Professor X. We're talking psionic power here, mind and soul abilities.
Her powers usually kicked in during childhood trauma, like that Annie Richardson incident that sources mentioned.
Yeah, telepathic link with her dying friend basically jump-started her abilities. Very traumatic trigger.
And Xavier stepped in. Didn't he initially block her telepathy?
He did, which is interesting. Her telepathy was apparently so powerful and raw, he suppressed it to prevent overload, focusing on her telekinesis first. He brought the telepathy back online later, once she had more control.
So she was trained at Xavier's school, founding X-Men member. This analysis focuses on that period, disciplined learning control. Alpha level, but definitely not Omega or Phoenix yet.
Her powers are purely psionic. First, telekinesis TK, manipulating the physical world with her mind.
That's her main weapon and defense early on, right? Lifting, moving things, people.
Yep. Offensively, she can throw concussive blasts, hurl huge objects. The sources mention early feats around 50 tons, but potential for much more is implied. And she had fine control too, manipulating molecules, disassembling machines.
And defensively, force fields.
Incredibly strong ones, blocking physical attacks, energy blasts, major impacts. And get this, the sources say her shields have even blocked her own TK attack.
Wow, that says a lot about their strength.
It really does. She also uses TK for flight, carrying others. Standard stuff for powerful telekinetics.
Then there's the telepathy, alpha level classification.
Core abilities. Reading minds, projecting thoughts, creating psychic links.
Offense.
Psionic bolts, mental stun guns, basically. Mental assaults like mind control attempts, illusions, inflicting psychic pain. Effectiveness depends on the target's defenses, obviously.
And defensively, she can shield her own mind.
Yes, against intrusion, control, illusions. The sources mention specific feats where she resisted mental attacks, Xavier's training paying off.
Utility stuff for telepathy.
Silent communication long range. And critically, projecting her consciousness onto the astral plane. The sources make a point that even early on, she could interact with souls or spirits there. That Annie Richardson incident is the key example cited.
So she can interact with non-physical entities on some level.
It seems so, based on that precedent. She could also communicate with intelligent animals, and a side effect of her powerful telepathy was eidetic memory, photographic recall.
Okay, one more power listed. Empathy.
Right, sensing, feeling emotions. And she could potentially manipulate them too, induce fear, despair, maybe subtly influence someone's state. But again, strong willpower could likely resist this.
So what were her weak spots back then?
While her powers were still developing, control, especially over massive TK feats, could be a struggle. She wasn't as refined as her later self.
And emotions played a big part.
Definitely. Intense feelings, fear, anger could make her powers spike unpredictably, or she could lose control. Less experience in managing that compared to later Jean.
And like Jodie, if her TK shields aren't up.
Standard human durability. Vulnerable to physical harm.
Okay, so putting them in the hypothetical arena, what are the key dynamics the analysis highlights? It's psionics versus this unique spiritual human setup.
Exactly. And the sources raise some really critical questions about how they'd interact. Like, can Jean's telepathy, the kind that can touch minds and even souls on the astral plane, remember Annie Richardson, can it directly affect Aiden's spiritual form?
That's a massive question. If she could mess with his consciousness or that spiritual tether.
It could potentially neutralize him or at least severely disrupt the bond with Jodie. A huge potential advantage for Jean.
And what about Jean's TK versus Aiden's intangibility? He just phases through stuff.
Right, but Jean's TK manipulates matter and energy. So the question is, could her telekinetic field somehow interact with or contain Aiden, especially given his known weakness to those DPA containment fields?
Ah, the containment field weakness again.
Yes, and the analysis really focuses on this. It proposes that Jean's TK fields might be able to replicate the effect of those DPA fields, create a psionic barrier that Aiden specifically can't pass through.
That would be a hard counter, wouldn't it?
The sources suggest exactly that. A potential hard counter to Aiden's core nature and abilities.
Okay, flip side. Can Aiden's unique attacks get past Jean's defenses? Possession, or that choke attack, especially if it is spiritual against her Xavier-trained telepathic shields.
Well, Jean has resisted mystical mind control before, like from Ogun. The analysis suggests this points to a strong capacity to resist spiritual possession, too. The choke attack's effectiveness would likely depend on whether it's just TK strangulation or something more esoteric that might bypass normal defenses.
So, primary attacks. Aiden would likely go for TK throws, using the environment, maybe trying the choke, or the high-risk possession attempt.
Well, Jean has options against both. She could focus TK directly on Jodie Blast's restraints crushing force, or she could target Jodie's mind with telepathy psionic bolts, inducing fear or panic, maybe even trying for a full mental shutdown.
Which would cripple Jodie and indirectly weaken Aiden.
Exactly. The analysis notes that attacking Jodie's well-being directly impacts Aiden, and Jean also has that potential avenue of using her telepathy to directly target Aiden's spiritual form, maybe via the astral plane, though how effective that would be is less certain than attacking a physical mind.
Defensively, Aiden's shield protects Jodie, but can it hold against Jean's TK power?
That's a key question, and we already talked about Jean's TK fields potentially acting as containment against Aiden.
So the core vulnerability keeps coming back to Jodie.
Absolutely. The sources are very clear. Jodie's human body is the critical weak link. If you can incapacitate or kill Jodie, Aiden is effectively neutralized because of that tether. Jean has the perfect tools, powerful TK and TP to target that specific weakness.
It really is an asymmetrical fight then.
Fundamentally, Jodie and Aiden, unique, unit, intangibility, special attacks, but tied to a vulnerable anchor. Jean Grey. Solo psionic powerhouse, versatile, strong defenses, but physically human without shields. Jean's strategic edge seems to be exploiting Jodie's vulnerability and potentially containing Aiden.
Okay, what about other strategic factors? X factors the sources mentioned.
Aiden's intangibility and stealth are big advantages for positioning and surprise attacks, but always limited by that tether range.
His unpredictability, too. Could be good or bad.
Right. His emotional reactions might lead to mistakes or sudden bursts of power Jean doesn't expect. A wild card.
Jean's fine control with TK. Could she do internal attacks?
Later, Jean definitely could manipulate molecules internally. The analysis suggests early Jean might struggle with that level of precision against Aiden's broad shield or Jodie's potential healing via Aiden, but it's a possibility. Maybe targeting a nerve subtly if she got an opening.
Environment use.
Both can use it, but Jean likely has more raw power for bigger manipulations even early on.
And experience. Jodie the survivor versus Jean the trainee.
Jodie definitely has more gritty survival experience against extreme, weird threats. Jean is highly trained tactically, but maybe less seasoned against something exactly like Aiden compared to her later self. It's a factor, but the analysis doesn't see it outweighing the power-vulnerability dynamic.
Which brings us back again to that containment field weakness.
Yes, the sources really hammer this point. It's a confirmed vulnerability for Aiden, and Jean's potential ability to replicate it with TK is flagged as a potential game changer, a way to just take Aiden off the board.
Okay, let's try to summarize the advantages and disadvantages clearly based on everything we've discussed from the sources.
For Jodie and Aiden, advantages Aiden's intangibility, stealth, diverse powers. TK, choke, possession, shield, heal, sensing. Jodie's resilience and training plus the healing offers sustainment.
Disadvantage is Jodie's human vulnerabilities number 1, Aiden's tether range. That specific containment field weakness, their dependence on Jodie being okay, Aiden's unpredictability, and the shared pain from possession.
For early, Jean Grey. Advantages, significant raw TK and telepathic power, even early. Versatile applications, offense, defense, utility. Strong telepathic defenses thanks to Xavier. Strategic thinking over maybe pure instinct. The potential to interact directly with Aiden's spirit. And that huge potential to use TK as containment.
Disadvantages for Jean, power still developing, less refined control. Emotional state can affect her powers more easily than later. Standard human durability without shields. Empathy can be resisted, and less experience against this specific type of foe.
So putting it all together, the analysis outlined a few plausible scenarios for how this fight could play out.
Scenario 1. Jean goes straight for Jodie, recognizes the weak link, hammers her with TK or TP. The turning point is whether Aiden's shield holds or if Jodie just gets overwhelmed.
Scenario 2. Aiden tries a knockout blow early, attempts possession or the choke on Jean. Turning point is simple. Does it work against Jean's defenses? If yes, they might win. If no, Aiden's likely drained and Jodie's exposed.
Scenario 3. A drawn-out fight. War of attrition. Jean tries to wear down Aiden's energy or Jodie's stamina. Turning point is when Jodie falters or Aiden runs out of juice, letting Jean land a decisive blow on Jodie.
Scenario 4. Jean gets the containment lock. She successfully creates that TK field mimicking the DPA ones around Aiden. Turning point. Aiden is trapped, cut off, neutralized. Jodie is left alone facing Jean. Likely outcome there is grim for Jodie.
So, pulling all that analysis together, the reasoned conclusion from the sources, who's the most likely victor?
The analysis leans heavily towards early Jean Grey. The single biggest factor, repeated throughout the sources, is Jodie's fundamental human vulnerability.
Even with Aiden's shield and healing.
While they're significant, the analysis concludes they might not be enough against a focused, sustained assault from Jean's alpha-level TK or her debilitating telepathy aimed squarely at Jodie.
And Aiden's specific weakness seals it.
It seems to be a major tipping point in the analysis. That confirmed vulnerability to containment fields, combined with Jean's potential ability to replicate them with TK, offers a clear path for Jean to neutralize Aiden entirely.
Plus, Jean's own mental defenses make Aiden's best shots possession. The choke, much less likely to succeed.
Right. Her training against mental and even mystical attacks makes her a very tough target for him. So the conclusion isn't just about who hits harder, but who can better exploit the specific weaknesses and strategic openings in this very unique matchup.
And the analysis says that's Jean, primarily due to Jodie's vulnerability and Jean's tools to target it and potentially contain Aiden.
That's the core argument presented in the sources, yes.
Okay. Whew. That was a lot to unpack. Let's lighten things up with some fun facts and trivia pulled from the material.
Good idea. For Jodie and Aiden, we found out Aiden's true identity, Jodie's stillborn twin brother, explains that intense bond.
And the name pronunciation, Aiden or Aiden, both seem valid according to the sources.
Oh, and Aiden the ghostly ATM, that time he apparently made an ATM dispense cash. Shows his tech manipulation ability.
He can also scare off other ghosts. Apparently, he can intimidate nasty infraworld entities that might bother Jodie.
And Jodie the accidental arsonist, while Aiden causing fires via TK when Jodie was being tormented by others. Yikes.
There's also that fan theory mentioned that Jodie's parents might have had latent psychic gifts, explaining her connection to Aiden. Interesting thought.
Okay, early Jean Grey Marvel Girl facts. Original codename was indeed Marvel Girl, and in her first appearance, X-Men #1 1963, she only showed telekinesis. Telepathy came later.
Yeah, and early on, she was sometimes portrayed as like the weaker member, despite having all that potential bubbling under the surface.
This is fun. While we focused pre-Phoenix, the sources mentioned the concept for the Phoenix Force was partly inspired by the idea of a mutant Thor.
Huh. Mutant Thor. Okay, what else?
She was a great communicator early on, telepathically talking even with intelligent animals. Dolphins, dogs, ravens are mentioned.
And that eidetic memory. The photographic recall as a side effect of her TP.
And worth repeating, Xavier initially put mental blocks on her telepathy because it was just too powerful, too raw for her to handle safely at first.
Finally, her whole power progression over decades of comics TK, then suppressed TP, then unlocked TP, then Phoenix. It kind of mirrors how comic characters evolve and get power-ups over time, doesn't it?
It really does reflect those long-term comic book storytelling tropes.
Wow. Okay, that really was a deep dive into some fascinatingly specific source material.
It definitely highlights how unique matchups between different power systems create these complex tactical puzzles.
And the core takeaway from the analysis seems pretty clear. Jodie's human vulnerability is the deciding factor, combined with Jean's ability to target that and potentially contain Aiden.
It gives early Jean Grey the edge in the specific hypothetical scenario, according to the sources provided.
It does make you think, though. That final provocative thought.
The what if?
Yeah. What if Aiden wasn't weak to containment fields? Or what if Jean's emotional control was even shakier back then, making her power just lash out wildly?
How would that change things? Definitely something interesting for you, the audience, to mull over.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Remember, you're awesome. Never let the world tell you otherwise. Stay safe.
Stay sane.